Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, become a premium member of the Crusade channel. Go on the website, listen for free, and we're all convinced that you're going to want to be a member and support the cause, which is the Crusade channel. The chat room is always open at crusadechannel.com/chat. And please, wherever you see Joe and I on social media, remember, most importantly right now, we're asking for 5 seconds of your time. Go to Frontline TV on YouTube, the Frontline TV on YouTube. You'll see Joe and I there, our ugly mugs. Like, subscribe, share. That all helps with the algorithm. Remember, on social media, they're not helping us. I don't care if you're a political conservative. I don't care if you're a cultural conservative. I don't care if you're conservative Catholic or traditional Catholic. They're not helping any of us with their algorithms. The only way we get an audience is if we get it ourselves, okay? We tag every video. They should be getting tens of thousands of views, and they don't, because we know that, listen, we don't get banned, but they just don't help us. Not the way they help Black Lives Matter or Antifa or any of the leftist groups out there, okay? Or the abortion industry or anything like that. We need your help. With money? Sure. Joe and I have a Patreon page. You could support us every month. Throw in $5, $10, $500, whatever you want. Patreon.com/the Frontline with Joe and Joe. But what we would really ask is that a big push on the Frontline TV on YouTube. Please subscribe there. And finally, Veritas Catholic Radio Network. Joe and I have a Sunday afternoon interview show. Oh, excuse me. That changed. We're now on Tuesday and Thursday at noon. So now that's a big step for us. That's AM radio in the Connecticut, Westchester, and Northern Long Island area, soon to be New York City. Pray for us. Pray for the
FM
station.
as well, Joe.
FM as well, 103.5 or
103.9.
103.9 FM and 1350 AM in that area. But there's a downloadable app at the Veritas Catholic Network, so that you can hear everything on the station, including the Frontline with Joe and Joe. And you can download the 35 or 40 interviews we've done up to this point. Raymond Arroyo, Bill Donahue, Ralph Martin, Jesse Romero. I mean, you name it. Joe and I have been blessed, and our little show here has been blessed, because not only are we on the Crusade channel, and we are very blessed to be on the Crusade channel, but we're really moving it forward, especially with our interviews. So all your support and all your prayers are greatly appreciated. Now, let me say this, okay? When people talk about, oh, that persecution complex, or you people think you're being picked on, and all the nonsense. It's just right-wing Catholic conspiracy theory. Nonsense. When we tell people, and we've been telling people for 3 years, they're coming after you. We've said on the show before, they wantonly, brazenly support the slaughter of innocent babies in the womb. What do you think they'll do to you? Okay? And now we're seeing it. We're already seeing we've been seeing this in America, but it hasn't gotten completely insane yet, but it's going to, because just south of the border, and not some backwater, Mexico's not some backwater. Mexico is an industrialized nation, okay? And at one point, it was an extremely Catholic nation after Our Lady of Guadalupe, okay, converted the people of Mexico, all right? But the Mexicans in the last 100 years or so, since the Cristero War, since the infiltration of the Freemasons, have gone off the deep end. They have devolved away from Catholicism, okay? Well, now the persecution, I mean, it's 2021. This is like rewinding to 1921 with the Cristero War, okay? The Mexican government is targeting the Catholic Church for speaking the truth about the Catholic faith. The martyrdom that is going to potentially come from that, okay? I mean, look, we're gonna talk about it tonight or today. It's right around the corner. And if you're a conservative Protestant, if you're an Orthodox Jew, all right, if you're a conservative Muslim, okay, who has overlap with us on abortion and gay marriage and all these things, you're not going to be able to open your mouth. You think Orthodox Jews are going to be protected like, let's say, the Rob Reiners of the world? They were vandalized last year. Joe and I covered it down in Lakewood, New Jersey, okay, because they spoke out against gay marriage and gender ideology in the schools, okay? So nobody's immune from it. But remember something. There's a particular animus. Let's put it like that, Joe Resinello. There's a particular animus that emanates from the left towards the Catholic Church in particular. Okay, remember, as E. Michael Jones always says, the Catholic Church is the engine, the vehicle of Logos in the last 2,000 years. The left has to attack us because we possess the fullness of the truth. But the evangelicals, Orthodox Jews, and others who agree with us, Joe, and even the lukewarm, and we'll get into them too. Joe, listen, nobody's safe from these people. Nobody's safe. And we're going to talk about that because the martyrdom we think is going to come because they're already planting the seeds for it. What do you think 2020 was all about? And we need to fight back. We're going to talk about that. And then Andrew Torba, who is, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, he's CEO of Gab. All right, CEO of Gab. Now, he's a Protestant. He's an evangelical Christian, okay? He's a person of goodwill. Joe, I think he had a couple of pretty frightening predictions for those who profess with their lips and believe in their heart that Jesus Christ is Lord, as we do, okay? And speak that in the public square. So, again, are we joyful? Well, we're always joyful. I mean, that's a gift from God to be joyful. But in the meantime, for ourselves, for our family, for our loved ones, we have a lot to worry about. All right. And we have a lot to fight against. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And that's why I want to hand it over to Joe Resinello, because Mexico, Joe Resinello, Marx once said, it was funny. Marx was a funny guy, actually. If you think
Karl Marx, Joe.
Yeah, not Groucho. Not Groucho, but Karl Marx actually was a very good writer. He was so off base with his ideology and his worldview. But he said a few funny things. One of them was that history repeats itself twice. The first time is tragedy. The second time is farce. And the first time in Mexico, obviously it was tragic and a lot of people died. Okay. And it was a direct assault on the Catholic Church in Mexico. And now it seems farcical because these people 100 years later are going to try to do the same thing. Let's hope it stays farcical and doesn't get tragic again. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Joe.
As Joe was saying, we were going to start it off with Mexico. This one comes from Catholic World Report. 2 Mexican cardinals, a bishop, and 3 priests have been convicted of constitutional violations for warning the public against the ruling party's opposition to the values of human life and family, their advocacy of LGBT agenda, and their promotion of socialism. The convictions have caused alarm in Mexico regarding the implications for freedom of speech and the right to criticize the Socialist Party, Morena, which is accused of undermining Mexican civil rights. Among the convicted were the Cardinal Archbishop of Mexico City, Carlos Aguilera Reyes, and the former Archbishop of Guadalajara, Cardinal Juan Sandoval Inguinez. The decision was handed down November 18th by Mexico's National Electoral Tribune in response to a lawsuit filed by Mexico's ruling Socialist Party, which is known as Morena. I mean, as Joe said, I mean, we all know about the Cristeros and the history in Mexico under what was his name? Calles.
Yeah, Plutarch Calles.
I mean, there were martyrs. In fact, there's saints that came out of that period in Mexico. This is shocking because when Joe and I were talking about this, I mean, this is the Cardinal of Mexico City. Keep this in mind. Our Lady of Guadalupe, the cathedral, is in Mexico City. That is the second most visited church in the world next to Rome, St. Peter's. So this is a massive Catholic hub, and this is a massive international figure arrested. This is real. I mean, like when I saw this, I actually couldn't even believe it, actually. And like I said, people don't sometimes think that things like this can happen. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I can't believe what's happening in our country. I really can't. How it's accelerated.
Right.
And ultimately, right now, we still have the Constitution. But if you get the wrong type of justices, keep in mind, some of the biggest atrocities that have happened in history were legal. The Nazis killing the Jews. That was legal. That was completely legal in Germany.
Slavery.
I was just going to say that. completely legal.
Right.
So, like, don't think for a minute that this can't happen, because here it is in Mexico. They're arresting. This is not like a priest in like a small village,
Right.
which is not right either. This would be equivalent of arresting Cardinal Dolan in New York City for basically saying to his basically parishioners as a priest, listen, we are pro-life people and you cannot vote for people who are for abortion, and they take him out in handcuffs.
Joe, let me stop you there for a second, because this is where we have to make a decision as an American Catholic Church, okay? And these cardinals and these bishops better get it through their head, okay? If they're so worried about their tax exempt status, if they're so worried about the billions that they get from the federal government, okay, then you want to know what? Then they're not going to be able to speak out as these things are happening in the United States. Because what is Mexico doing? As you said, they're saying, well, it's against our Constitution. We have a separation of church and state. That means that they're going to basically say that the church is violating the law, as you alluded to when you said, well, it's legal for them to persecute the church. It's actually, from what I understand, it's a clause
There is a
after
clause.
the Cristero War that really wasn't enforced, okay? But now they're pulling that out of mothballs and they're enforcing it. The bishops in America need to understand before they start going to jail. You better screw your tax exempt status, okay? Screw the billions of dollars that you get from the federal government. Because let me tell you something, you're going to lose it anyway at some point. When these, Joe, if you listen, you get a bunch of Catholic bishops in America that sit on their hands and do nothing. What do you think? The left is just when they finally, if they do, if God allows them for whatever his purposes are to actually take over and get real power in America, what do they think? The Supiches of the world and the Joseph Tobins of the world in Newark, what do they think is going to happen to them? They think that the left is just going to say, well, you guys actually didn't speak out against us, so you're okay. That's not going to happen. The problem, Joe, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we're dealing with Marxists. That's in the article. I'm not just saying that. This is the socialist government, okay, that's in power, okay? They will do everything they can to achieve power, and they will stop at nothing. They'll stop at nothing, and they will come down on the church like I don't know what. And these cardinals and bishops, Joe, have to get it through their head. These people are not your friend. Pray for them, yes, but damn it, you got to fight against them. And more importantly, I'm going to hand it over to you. We have to speak out against them and fight back against them, because they're going through the same thing in Mexico, Joe. And now cardinals are getting arrested that we're going through here in the United States. What say you?
Well, let's talk about specifically what Cardinal Juan Sandoval Iguanez said. This is the what's it called? The gentleman from Archbishop from Guadalajara, former Archbishop. He's the primary target. Let me just let our listeners know specifically what he said, and then you judge for yourself, because he was arrested. This is what he said on a YouTube video, June 2nd of this year. There is much at stake in these elections. If those who are in power win, a dictatorship will come. That is, liberty will be lost, because we're talking about a system that is communist, socialist, that enslaves. You just need to look at the countries that have fallen into it. We also warned that the economy of Mexico would be very damaged. We're going to be very poor, like Venezuela and Cuba. He goes on to say, the good of the family of human life is at stake, because this government has adopted gender ideology, which brings with it all the unnatural barbarities that they can unleash, which can impede and destroy the family, as well as bring about abortion, express divorce, homosexuality, homosexual marriage. Also at stake was religious liberty, said the cardinal, because the communist Marxist system asks for it, which means it demands
it.
You see,
exactly right.
I give him credit because it's a very bold statement. And frankly, one thing I want to say right now is all of these things, particularly when you're talking about issues that have plagued America, divorce, basically the breakdown of families, the breakdown of marriage, the idea that traditional marriage is not marriage. Somehow you could dilute that and include others and make that on equal plane. Those are Catholic tenets. You see, what this guy is saying, and this is the beauty of our faith, you don't have to be a genius. You just have to have the courage to say it.
Mm-hmm.
You see, that's kind of what Joe and I do. You know, a lot of the stuff that we say, we're not reinventing the wheel. What this gentleman just said is what the Catholic Church believes it. He just has the courage to say it.
Right.
And people have to say it. You see, our prelates have to say these things.
Well, that's there. But Joe, that is, when you think about the power that the church has, that if the church spoke with one voice, you're listening to the Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online. Joe Resinello, if they would speak with one voice, loudly, boldly, okay, you want to know what? The world would listen. Sometimes I think these bishops and cardinals, not that they're maybe necessarily negligent or derelict in their duty. Sometimes I think they don't understand the power that they have as let's say the successors to the apostles. If they spoke with one voice, if Rome spoke with one voice and told the Mexican government, you will not do anything to our cardinals. You will not do
Joe,
anything to our cardinals and bishops. What's
the
that?
American churches has been neutered, and what
No,
these
Joe,
men
Joe,
do,
go ahead.
but what they understand, I actually think they do understand the power of the church, but they're not willing to be persecuted for it. Look at prelates that have, and look what's happened to them. You see, like, there is an issue within the church. There's conflict. Listen, how could there not be unity within the church? It's all written down. You either believe it or you don't. I mean, this is not a storefront church in Newark. It's written down. I don't get it, but I do get it. And so do they. They don't make waves because, frankly, when you make waves, look what they did to Cardinal Pell. They threw him in jail, Joe.
Right.
You see, this is what they do understand. And they're not willing to go through that. And here's the thing, and this is what I've said time and time again. You don't become a priest. First of all, you become a priest if you're called. It's not your decision. God chooses you. Second of all, if you have a high intellect and the church identifies certain qualities in you, i.e. holiness, i.e. you have a good managerial skills, administration skills, and you become a bishop, it's not to have a comfortable life. It's like a man who gets married. Marriage is a process of dying to yourself. Too many people in marriage look at it as what am I going to get out of it?
Right.
Well, sometimes I think when you become a priest or when you are a bishop, if God calls you to a bishop, or never mind a cardinal, you're called to die to yourself. And here's the deal. That means speaking the truth. What that man just said, it applies across the board to every Catholic diocese in the world.
That's
Joe.
right. That's right. And I just don't understand. I just don't understand how when you see the handwriting on the wall, again, it's blatant. You don't even have to look for the handwriting on the wall. It's staring you in the face. The Mexican government is arresting, okay, and convicting of constitutional violations 2 Mexican cardinals and a bishop and 3 priests. And then this is see, I think, Joe, I think there's some traditional Catholics out there that beat up on the bishops too much. Okay. And then I think there's some that don't beat up on them enough. And I say beat up on them in a loving way. I don't mean arbitrarily just hammer them. Okay. It's not that they don't do everything. They do everything wrong. That's not right. That wouldn't be fair to say. But this is a matter of the life of the church. This is a matter of the well-being, okay, in this world of priests and bishops and cardinals and, yes, lay people, okay? It's always the lay people that want. I mean, when you talk about all the 200,000 that got slaughtered in the Vendée by these very same kind of people, revolutionaries, that's what this broad from Morena is all about, okay? She's just another Marxist revolutionary. Then we need you to speak up. And somehow, some way, if you say that, you're being disrespectful to the hierarchy, and say, no, I'm being very respectful. In fact, I'm respecting their office more than they are, because I'm asking them to speak out loudly and boldly against this type of nonsense. This is not acceptable, Joe. This
When
is
you look
not
at,
acceptable.
if you ever want to see a good movie, I always say, because it was very moving, was Romero with Raul Julia. Have you ever seen it, Joe?
I saw it a long time ago.
It's a very interesting film because he did speak out. They killed him.
Right.
And my point is, there's a price to pay. You see, we're not willing to pay it. We're not willing to pay it on the lay level, Joe. But it's also that idea is also, it's permeated to priests and it's permeated into our bishops. We're not willing to pay that price. Now, what's the price? The coffers might go down.
Right.
There might be a step back before we take 10 steps ahead, and we would, because God will never be outdone in generosity. We're not willing to pay the price because, as we all know, when you speak the truth, when you live the truth, there is a price to be paid. You'll be ostracized. You're marginalized. People think you're odd. People will leave, like, won't have anything to do with you. You may not be able to get certain jobs. You may be limited in the jobs that you get. It's a price. You see, we're not willing to pay it. Families, it begins with families, Joe. I could remember the sisters, CFR sisters. I was on a pilgrimage and I was kind of basically, you know, for a lack of a better word, bitching about the clergy a little bit. And sister, she turned it right on me and she said, Joe, the reason why we don't have good priests and good religious is because families aren't doing their job. And she's right.
Right.
When you have families, people have 8 kids, they understand what sacrifice is, laying down your life, because it's lived in the house every day. So if that man grows up and says, I have a call to become a priest, it's second nature. Athanasius Schneider, why he is the way he is, he grew up under communism. He had to fight for every crumb of his Catholic faith. That's why he is the way he is. As Cardinal Pell says in his book, I'm reading it. He said he was appropriately named after St. Athanasius. You see, that's why these men, we have a milquetoast culture. We're weak because we're comfortable. We're too comfortable.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Joe, and you're listening to the front line with Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. In the breach, you have Mexican cardinals and bishops and priests being arrested by the socialist government. We're on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at thecrusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. But I don't know how to say it, Joe, but the thing is, you mentioned Cardinal Pell, okay? And certainly, and you know, there are others who remember that they're wearing a red hat. Okay, I guess that's my larger point. And you know, I just can't emphasize the point enough that if they actually, you know, I guess what I was actually, Joe, I was just reminded what I was saying because you mentioned comfortability. Okay, remember something. Your average person, and this would be my argument to, let's say, the lukewarm out there, if you will. And again, it's not because I'm opposed to comfort. Again, I'm one of God's laziest creatures. Okay, I get it. I'm not judging anybody. All right. But a lot of people say, well, I don't want to do this, that, or the other thing the church says because I want to do this and I want to do that and I don't want to listen to the Catholic Church. Okay, fair enough. That's your choice. You don't want to listen to the Catholic Church. But I would tell you this: if these people gain power, you will bend your knee to them. That you, Mr. Lukewarm, are not going to be able to disagree with them on anything. And I could back that up, Joe Resinello. I could back that up with evidence. I think we brought it up before on the show. J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series. Joe, she's a dyed-in-the-wool leftist. Feminist, okay? In other words, there's nothing right-wing about J.K. Rowling. And they're attacking her viciously because she says men are men and women are women. So you get my point when I tell the lukewarm, that's a leftist. She's not exactly lukewarm, J.K. Rowling, okay? She's anti-church. She's all on the left, okay? But she disagrees with them on that one thing and speaks about it, and they attack her. What do you think, Joe, they're going to do to a lukewarm guy who might not want to listen to the Catholic Church, but then by the same token, he says, yeah, but I don't want my 15-year-old son coming home and telling me he's gay. I don't want my son to come home and tell me he thinks he's a woman. I don't want my daughter to come home at 8 years old and say that her 3rd grade teacher told her she could be a boy. Okay. That guy's going to go into that guy goes into the gulag too. Not just jamokes like you and me, if you know what I'm trying to say. So I just don't understand how anybody, lay people included, and even lukewarm people, why are you sitting on your hands and you're allowing this nonsense to happen? You think in your mind it won't happen to you because, as you mentioned, Joe Resinello, you're comfortable right now. If you think the Catholic Church makes you uncomfortable because the Catholic Church preaches the truth, particularly on sexuality, wait till these people get in power, and we'll see if you have any comfort left in your life.
Well, that's when the church will thrive again. Because when push comes to shove, this is where these folks don't understand history. The church doesn't thrive when it's comfortable. The church thrives when it's persecuted. And that's what they don't calculate into their calculus. When this does happen, and we're seeing it, a lot of people, like you said, you say this story, or you give a broad stroke statement like they could persecute you, people blow it off. Well, this is happening. And again, it's the Cardinal of Mexico City
Right.
arrested. So my point is this. When that happens in America, that's when we're going to separate the sheep from the goats.
Yeah.
That's when the church will thrive. The church never thrived more as when the Romans were killing people.
It's an interesting paradox of human history when you think about that. In other words, Catholics are however many, 1.8 billion people in the world are self-identified Roman Catholic. Okay. In other words, and yet we inspire, we're not persecuted now, and we inspire very, very few conversions, except for certain people who are seeking the truth, could find it at EWTN. Let's say, because as we did, Mother Angelica, Father Carapi, they could find it with good Catholics at the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online, speaking out. But generally speaking, Joe, it seems as though the martyrdom that the early Catholic Church suffered under the Romans seems to be. I mean, we're going to talk about martyrdom. I mean, if you want to evangelize, it almost seems the best way to go. And Joe, I don't embrace martyrdom, if you know what I mean. Okay. In other words, nobody's looking to go out in the public square and get their head chopped off. But the fact is, the church grew when you thought they would die, when you thought the church would die, okay, under the power of the Roman Empire. All right. That's when it spread the most, eventually overtaking the Roman Empire. All right. But nowadays, Joe, are people really inspired by the Catholic Church? I mean, I'm inspired by a guy like the former cardinal Iniguez that you mentioned. He said it true. He goes, Sandoval. Oh no, this was Sandoval. He refused to apologize for his statements and doubled down in early October, repeating his call not to vote for pro-abortion politicians. So this guy's willing to die in jail. Pell was willing to die in jail too. Okay. No, he knew he was unjustly put in jail. He would have died there. Okay. He would have embraced his suffering. I think we need more of that. I think
but
we
also,
need more of that.
You say that people don't take it seriously. Most people are not called to a red martyrdom. Most. And it's a grace. Martyrdom is a grace, meaning not to die, because no one wants to die. It's not human, but to accept that as a grace. It's not natural. As we saw with St. Peter, he fled Rome. It's not natural. He saw the miracles of Christ with his own eyes, and yet he still ran. So it's a grace, but
Right.
We're all called to white martyrdom. And what is that? Dying to ourselves in our state of life. If our Catholic people, even if 10% of American Catholics embraced the call to white martyrdom, we would change America.
I would agree. R.C. Van Landingham, he wrote this article, Joe, in Crisis Magazine, Will the Left's Violence Lead to Martyrdom? I think that that's a great way to segue into this article. If we all accepted the fact that we need to sacrifice certain things, what do we talk about all the time? We need to, as best we can, as much as we could fight, we need to be exemplars of personal holiness, both in ourselves, okay, and in our families. We need to lead a Catholic life, okay? And I think by definition, that means we're not perfect, okay? But we need to lead a Catholic life. And that would be that sacrifice you're talking about, okay? Where you have, let's say, for argument's sake, white martyrdom, but that sacrifice, that self-sacrifice, it has an influence on people. If we did that, is my larger point, and then I'm going to ask you a question. If we did that, that might forestall the red martyrdom that might be right around the corner. And that's what R.C. Van Landingham is writing about when he says, will this violence that basically, I want you to get into it, Joe, that we've been allowing now for the last couple of years in America, is this going to lead potentially to red martyrdom?
Well, it's possible. It's very possible. I mean, why didn't we confront the conflicts that were taking place in the summer of 2020? We allowed people to burn police stations down, to burn businesses down, owned by both black and white, hurt people, innocent people. We permitted it. Why? Because we were not willing to basically take a stand, because we would rather be quote unquote comfortable than be in conflict. That was like one of the things, like with Trump, the people who hated Trump, they say he's so like, like confrontational.
Yeah.
Well, listen, if someone's pushing you, and here's the thing, this isn't conspiracy. You are pushing us. If you're people of faith, religious liberty, you're pushing us. You're forcing children in the public school to be indoctrinated by, frankly, things that go against your religion. You prohibit me from doing that in the public school by saying Our Father. That applies. An Our Father isn't just a Catholic prayer. It was the only prayer that came out of Jesus Christ's mouth. So a Protestant could acknowledge the Our Father. You prohibit that. And frankly, rightfully so. We live in a pluralistic society. You don't want that in the public school? I'll be honest with you. Okay, I could swing with it to a degree. But why are you forcing your ideology down my children's throat?
Well, they'll say it's not religion, but then I would argue, okay, but it's still an ideology and a worldview that I'm opposed to. As you said, Joe Resinello, if anything, then be neutral.
That's exactly my point, Joe. That's my point. You see, you should be neutral. I won't listen. Christ did not impose his will even on Pilate as he was about to be killed. The church proposes. Now you could say, well, you're imposing your will on women with abortion. It's not about the women. It's about the child.
Right.
You see, you got it skewed because you like recreational sex.
Right.
It's skewed in your head. You don't get it because you can't get that out of your head. And that's a product of sex, intercourse. You have a child. It happens. And you are not willing to give up your recreational sex. I'm not imposing my will. I'm protecting the child.
I saw a good meme. And some of those memes, Joe, not for nothing, they some of them are stupid. Some of them actually make a really good point. I will say the meme was two pictures, Joe, one on top of the other. Okay. And the top picture was of a bedroom, like a bed in a bedroom. And the bottom picture was a picture of the place where they murder babies in the abortuaries. Okay. And the meme was the time to make it, or the place to make a choice is in the top place, not the bottom one. You understand? The place to make a choice is you've made a choice. There's your reproductive freedom. Okay. In other words, in your bedroom, nobody's knocking down your door. And I want to tell some of these ugly feminists, okay, don't or not knocking down your bedroom door. Okay. But that's the place to make your choice. That's the place where your reproductive freedom is. The place on the bottom, the abortuary, there is no choice there. You can't kill your kid. Can't stand. But I want to read something to you, Joe, if that's okay. All right. Sure. From R.C. Van Landingham in Crisis Magazine. Okay. And Joe, really, I want you to speak to this because to me, this is where our conservatives are disgraziad. We haven't used that word on the Crusade Channel, Joe, in a very long time. So for the Crusade Channel audience out there, the conservatives are disgraziad. That includes Cruz and Hawley and the rest of them, because on important matters, they won't even make a stink. And I'm going to tell you what the important matter is. If you are a United States senator and you're threatening violence, you get censured. In fact, you should be kicked out of the Senate. Now, this is Jeanne Shaheen, I always hated her name, by the way. Jean Shaheen. She sounds like a hippie that got high and got laid at Woodstock. Okay. This is Jean Shaheen. She's a sitting Democrat, United States Senator, and
New
she was
Hampshire.
commenting on the Dobbs case. Okay. That's before the Supreme Court. Now, I want you all around out there who hear our voice to swish this around in your mouth like a fine wine, okay? And you tell me that if it's the Republicans and the conservatives that are the violent ones, okay? And tell me that I'm wrong in my criticism and Joe's criticism of weak-kneed conservatives who don't want to stand up and do something. This is a senator. I'm going to say it one more time, okay? I hope the Supreme Court is listening to the people of the United States. The senator said, according to the New York Post, I think if you want to see revolution, go ahead and outlaw Roe versus Wade and see what the response is of the public, particularly young people. Okay. Joe, let me tell you something. Babies get killed in the womb all the time. If anybody's got a right to go out and protest and burn things down, it's us. And we don't do that. We pray in front of abortion clinics. That's what we do. Okay. Because babies are being killed. And we protest against that. Okay. And I don't want to go there, but we protest against that in a prayerful way. Okay. Notice, and she's saying that this is really what Van Landingham, I thought, had a great line. What he's saying, in other words, allow the left to kill babies in the womb, or they might kill you in the streets. Joe, I need your comment to that because the vein is popping out of my head right now.
I actually agree with what she's saying. I think that's the grenade pin. If Roe gets overturned, ultimately, if Roe gets overturned, and there are intellectuals like Robert George out of Princeton, he actually thinks it's going to be. I actually read, too, something Dershowitz said, and he is a liberal, self-professed, but he's also has some intellectual honesty. And he has also said, just to keep this in mind, the youngest tenured Harvard professor in the history of Harvard Law School. There is nothing in the Constitution that supports Roe. This week, John Roberts he showed his hand. He wrote an article saying that the court isn't political, that they have to rethink. Clearly, his motive is to influence Gorsuch, what's his face?
Kavanaugh
and Barrett. He's trying to influence them because that, to me, says two things. It showed his hand, and two, he actually thinks it could get overturned.
Right.
Now, if it does, Joe, all hell is going to break loose.
You know what, Joe? Here's what I thought about. No, I want you to finish your point, and then I want to comment. Go ahead.
Here's the thing. Couple things on that. That just means it goes to the states. And to a degree, that could be a good thing. Because ultimately, I think that could lead to us out of this hole. Because the states that have abortion and continue with this ridiculous ideology and these bad ideas are going to, and this is including New Jersey, are going to fold. They're going to collapse. And frankly, from that dirt, new life will come. So it could be a good thing. But ultimately, Joe, I'll tell you, people will go berserk.
Now, here's the response, okay? And we're talking about this because one thing that Van Landingham talks about, okay? He says, I cannot deny. Now, he was talking about really turning the other cheek and everything that means. Because some people, Joe, are very wishy-washy when it comes to turning the other cheek or the interpretation of what Jesus was really trying to say there, okay? Turning the other cheek is not running away. Turning the other cheek is basically saying, okay, you hit me here. I'm going to turn the other cheek. I'm going to allow you to hit me here, okay? In other words, but you stand your ground. You stand your ground in front of the enemy, okay? But people misuse that saying of our Lord. But here's what Van Landingham said. He says, I cannot deny that God has called his servants to war many times, but the greatest battle was won on the cross when Christ willingly died for us. Now, what do I mean by that? Why am I bringing that up? Joe, here's what I would say. You said on the show before, Trump should have sent in the National Guard into Portland.
Oh, no doubt about it.
Into Seattle.
Because innocent people were getting killed.
Innocent people were getting killed. Minneapolis, okay, Chicago, New York. He should have sent in the National Guard when the local governments weren't doing anything. Now, here's my larger point. Listen, Miss Shaheen, okay, if there's going to be violence in the streets, then let it happen in New York. Let it happen in California. Let it happen in Oregon and Washington and other pro-abort states, okay? But in the states that either severely restrict or outlaw abortion, I would say to these governors who are already supposedly conservative to begin with, and if they've passed these laws, that means they are probably truly conservative. Okay, guy like Governor Abbott, guy like DeSantis, the governor of Mississippi, the governor of Alabama, the governor of Tennessee, and any other pro-life state, governor of Missouri, should come out and tell them, listen, Senator Shaheen, and any of you leftist thugs that are listening to us, if you come in and try to burn our cities in any way, shape, or form, if you cause civil unrest in our states, we will send in the National Guard within 24 hours after giving you one warning. And if you don't leave, it's not going to end well for you. So you go, if you want to protest, go protest in New York City. Go protest in downtown Los Angeles. Go burn down buildings in San Francisco. Don't come to our state. Do not come to our state, because you're not going to be treated very well if you think you're going to go out there and you're going to abuse people, kill people, burn down buildings, burn down businesses. It's not going to be tolerated. They ought to do what Donald Trump should have done in 2020 with all these leftist thugs. What say you, Joe?
Sadly, people say like that is like you're a Nazi, you're a fascist. No, that's just keeping order, because innocent people, listen, no matter what your ideas are, and you're entitled to them, and I'm open to debate with you, you can't hurt people. And if you do, the state, i.e. the government, has to protect the populace.
That's its duty, Joe. That's
correct.
The duty of the state.
And that is not, listen, that's not being a Nazi. That's not being a fascist. That's being, to be honest with you, a responsible governor, a responsible mayor, or a responsible president. Now, let's talk about the long game. You see, I think the answer to this all is states' rights. If Roe is overturned, and it may, and there is trouble, the way I look at it is very similar to what you just said. If New Jersey wants to behave like barbarians, let them. But the other states who don't should be allowed not to. And in doing so, it's almost like a war of ideas. Let's see who wins in the long game. Right. My bet is you collapse and I don't.
That's right.
And this is how you defeat them. You give them the rope to destroy themselves.
You are hitting the nail on the head at the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. You're hitting the nail on the head. I think we brought it up in our interview when we were talking to Tim Gordon about it was either the first time we spoke with him or the second time. We had two interviews with him. But the idea is this. You have, let's say, a swath of red states, okay, that act like red states, that exert their state authority over their own, in their state governments, bucking the Supreme Court. In other words, like abortion is not a right enumerated in the Constitution. Therefore, it is reserved for the states and the people, respectively. That's actually in the Constitution. You have red states that basically start acting like it, and what you do is you become, it's like we talk about with personal holiness. If you want to convert people to the one true faith, to the Catholic faith, then you need to live. The person you're trying to convert needs to see you attempting to live that life, and in your day-to-day life, your prayer life, how you treat other people, all these different things. And that's attractive to people, Joe, is why I'm bringing it up. If you live, let's say, Joe, in Alabama, okay, and Alabama becomes a pro-life state versus, let's say, some businesses want to take advantage of the low taxes, set up shop, now maybe have a better economy, right? All of a sudden, Alabama becomes very attractive to conservatives that are living in New Jersey or California or New York or Illinois and some of these places. You know what they say, Joe? They say, I'm flying the coop. I'm leaving. And you know what you said is exactly right. As people of goodwill and, generally speaking, more conservative-minded people leave the blue states because those other states become more attractive, you're exactly right. Jersey implodes. Let me be more general, Joe, and I want your opinion. All blue states without conservatives in those states will collapse economically. Because it's the conservatives who, quite frankly, now, Joe, you and I don't disagree on this, but I happen to be in a position where I could move. Okay. Some people they're not in that position. Okay. And that's for a variety of reasons. And my thing is this, but as more and more people get fed up, just using New Jersey as an example, if conservative people like you and me in New Jersey if we decided to leave the state en masse, okay, Jersey collapses. And that goes for any other blue state. That goes for New York. That goes for Connecticut. That goes for Rhode Island. That goes for Massachusetts. That goes for California. Joe, they'll collapse because we're the ones that they actually take all the money from. You know what I'm trying to say?
Well, I do, but also just based even outside of the exodus, and many people have left New York, New Jersey, California. I mean, that's been going on for quite some time. But even outside of the exodus, the ideas themselves will not stand. Patrick Deneen, who we interviewed, he's, a political scientist, teaches at Notre Dame. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, the left has won, and because they have won, they will lose because they'll collapse under their own weight. Their ideas can't sustain themselves. And this is what I'm saying is playing the long game. Even in the blue states, Joe, they'll change if you give them the rope to hang themselves, because the ideas can't sustain themselves. Just like communism couldn't sustain itself. The USSR didn't even last 100 years.
Right.
There are businesses in America. There are businesses in my area that have been around for more than 100 years. There are people that lived longer than the Soviet Union. They will collapse.
Right.
You see, these ideas, this is where people, like, it's the long game. Enjoy your hour. That's all you're going to get. Your ideas stink. And
But
they
Joe,
won't sustain a society.
But Joe, but they see, the thing is this though, these are such self-centered people because they don't do anything for posterity. They're not looking to hand down anything. You think a guy like Maduro in Venezuela or Castro when he was alive, they're not interested in communism. They're thugs. They're gangsters is what they are. They've been rightfully called gangsters by some of our greatest historians. Called them Paul Johnson. You call them gangsters because that's what they are. Okay, Mao was a gangster. He wasn't some great revolutionary political leader, nor is Maduro, nor is Stalin, nor is any one of them, Robert Mugabe, all of them. Okay, that's all they have in mind is what they can loot out of the people in this world because they are communist in one way. They're atheists. They don't believe anything that comes after this world. They don't believe in death, judgment, heaven, and hell. So what do? They do whatever they can to amass power and wealth, and then they do whatever they can to make sure they maintain power and wealth. Look at Maduro. Venezuela has fallen apart, and that guy still runs the government. Now, you explain to me how that's possible, because I want to agree with you, and I do in my heart agree with you, that these states will implode. But it seems like, Joe, we have nations that are imploding, and the left doesn't do anything, and the implosion continues. Again, I'll bring up Venezuela or Cuba. These are economic basket cases, okay? And yet the left is still in power, and they're in power in Mexico, and they're going to wreck Mexico too.
I mean, again, long game could be 80 years. I mean, think about Germany in the 20th century. Like, it was an 80-year run. Like, it's long term. Like it's, again, you can't talk to people. It's like a virus. Even if you put a barrel of a gun to their face, that's not going to solve the problem. This is a virus going through, it's running through America, and it's got to run its course.
Right.
But here's the good news. It will fail. It may take time, but it will fail because you look at history. It will fail. And I am as sure of that as I am that I'm talking right now.
Right.
Their ideas stink. And ultimately, people will wake up from the virus as the prodigal son did. The prodigal son didn't listen to the father. That's why he ran away. What got the son's attention? A pain point. It finally triggered. He was eating the food of the pigs. And he said, what the hell am I doing? I'm out of here. Eventually, that will happen. We haven't gotten there yet. And frankly, we're not even close because it's going to get a lot worse.
Well, then that's going to go back to the article from Van Landingham. Then the martyrdom might be around, because let me tell you something, white martyrdom or red martyrdom, Joe. Let me tell you something. Neither of it is both of which are going to put you in a pain point. Now, red martyrdom is going to take your life, but if you talk about, let's move on a little bit. We already know, and we could get into a lot more about Van Landingham's article, but we don't have enough time on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Would recommend going to Crisis Magazine and read the article. The full article is very good. Will the left's violence lead to martyrdom? One thing that I discovered this week, okay, this Andrew Torba character, okay, he's a pretty vocal guy, Joe Resinello. And he's the CEO of Gab. He's an evangelical Christian. We pray for his conversion to the Catholic Church, but nonetheless, dude speaks out boldly. He speaks out more clearly than a lot of our prelates do. Let's be quite frank about it. Now, he's talking really about maybe not red martyrdom, but he's talking about that pain point that you're talking about, Joe Resinello. Because if they impose this on us, it's going to be quite painful. What do you think?
Well, it's happened. He's basically saying that, like, it's a bleak prediction. He's saying people of faith won't be able to use money, open up bank accounts, get jobs. Listen, that's happened and does happen. I remember talking to a nun who served in Cuba. Your kids don't go to college if you go to church. You're allowed to go to church. You don't get the food rations that everyone else gets. In Northern Ireland, your kids couldn't go to school. You couldn't get work. Yet people stayed Catholic. You see, they're suffering. And that's possible. It's possible. It's happened. I'm bringing this up. It's happening now in countries. It happens in China. If you're in the underground church, you're persecuted. Now, right now, as we're speaking. Could it happen here? Absolutely. To a degree, it already has, because now you're shunned. Right now, if you say this in polite company, listen, I'm a Catholic. I believe in traditional marriage. You are viewed like you're a Klan member right now. And there are people who may actually try to get you removed from your job just for saying, listen, I'm Catholic. I believe in what my church teaches. By the way, Jews do too. Orthodox Jews see it exactly the way I do, and they work here too. I believe marriage is between a man and a woman. You are a pariah right now. So to a degree, they're not going to lock you up, but right now there's persecution to a degree. That's true. Absolutely. Could that happen? Yes. But I love what he says. And this is what I want to bring out in this article, because too many people look at it this way. Sure. He said this. He says, Jesus is not some hippie Mr. Rogers that our culture makes him out to be. He is the King of Kings. He reigns. He rules. He flips over tables in the temple. He brought the temple down to a pile of ash in 70 AD. He said he would, and he did. He scorned the den of vipers. He rebuked Satan, and this is the Jesus I know and worship. This is what Torba says, and this is the Jesus of Scripture. Christians better start getting to know that Jesus. You see, again, Jesus isn't some hippie. And just because you're a Christian, and we are Christian, that means you have to follow Christ. And Christ called it like he said it. And he spoke the truth. We have to speak it and live it too. We're not willing to do it. That's why we're in the situation we're in.
Yeah, but the problem is, Joe, when you're dealing with a modernist worldview, that's basically, seeped into our consciousness. What you get is, I forgot which state it was. This was last year. You had a priest in a parish who the pastor got replaced. He got moved, and he was replaced by an African priest, okay, who was much more orthodox in his preaching than his predecessor, okay? And the wishy-washy Jesus is love, and Jesus is forgiveness. No, he is, but he's a lot more than that, okay? Because Jesus is also the truth, and the truth hurts like a son of a bitch sometimes, okay? Especially when it's staring you right in the face, okay? And these basically hippies, they all look like 70-year-old leftover hippies from Woodstock. They went into this parish and they protested this priest, the woman who ran the protest, got up on the altar. Okay. And somebody was putting it on YouTube. One of the guys said to her, why are you doing this? This guy is a good priest. And she just kind of shunned him off. And she got up there and she said, if the message is not love, we don't want to hear it. And what was he talking about? What was the good priest talking about? Abortion and homosexuality. In other words, that's what he was talking about.
Well, the problem is people don't know what love is, Joe. You see, that's another, we talked about that with Frank Corin. People don't know what love is. They don't even know what truth is because we live life on the surface in America. We just do. We're a superficial people. America is as superficial as the day is long.
Yeah.
And this is, again, it comes down to the what word? The C word, comfort. This is where we're at. And this is why we're at where we're at. We just aren't willing. And here's the thing. To a degree, what Torba is saying is already happening. It's already happening. Basic tenets of people's faith, like marriage. You can't say that anymore publicly and in polite company. That's now, right now. And that is sad. But here's another thing he says. The time for lukewarm Christianity is over. I've said that time and time again. To be honest with you, lukewarm Christianity is nauseating, to be truthful with you. I'm not interested in it. My friend Rick, when I was in high school, when we used to party heavy, he used to say, Joe, anything worth doing is worth overdoing. And you know something? To a degree, I look at my faith like that. When I partied like that. I don't do that anymore. But I look at my faith. It's nauseating. I could respect a hardcore atheist more than I could basically. Lukewarm Christianity is nauseating. Christ even said it. I'll spit you out of my mouth. You don't stand for anything. You stand for nothing.
But Joe, lukewarm people are the ones, unfortunately, that have allowed others, usually some pretty scary types, to move history. Okay, because what they do is, especially in the modern times, when you look at, let's say, going back to the French Revolution, it's the lukewarm. Listen, the Protestant revolt should have never gotten off the ground, but it did. Why? Because people want comfortable Christianity. Lutheranism is just comfortable Christianity. You just give me a Bible. It's me, Jesus, and the Bible. And by the way, Martin Luther says I could sin and sin boldly. So I could believe in Jesus. I could have all the sex I want. I can get drunk as much as I want. I could eat as much as I want, like Luther did. All right. And Luther says I'm going straight to heaven because I'm just a totally depraved individual who doesn't really have a free will. People love that stuff, Joe. They eat that stuff up. That's lukewarm Christianity. You mean what? I could go out. I could commit adultery on my wife. You mean I could have sex with my secretary? In other words, and I could still go to heaven? Is that what you're saying? See, that's comfortable Christianity. Christ doesn't really have he's going to judge us all. Okay. But that is the path to hell, because that's a really bad way to look at Christ and his forgiveness and his compassion. Okay. Now he gives it freely, but you are called, in other words, in the Catholic Church, in the one true faith, to amend your life. We all try, we all fail, we continue forward. We ask the Lord to help us, and he does. All right. He helps us move along. But that's my point. If you look at, let's say, the way the lukewarm have enabled the jackboots in all different societies to run roughshod over that society, German Catholics should have stood up against Hitler right off the bat. Okay. In other words, they were duped by his rhetoric and everything else, and by the rhetoric of the Nazis. Okay. And others in history. Okay. Catholics get duped. People of goodwill, other non-Catholic Christians, they get duped by these guys. Why? Because they sit on their hands and they say, well, okay, but I still have to go to work tomorrow. And I sympathize. You got to put food on the table. It's not like I don't sympathize. But at some point, when you see evil rising to the level that it's rising now, worse than it ever has in human history, I think one can make an argument for that. Okay. You need to then start saying to yourself, okay, I got to get in this fight. I got to at least open my mouth. I got to go to a rally. I got to go to a protest. I got to do something, because this is getting ridiculous. Joe, we have about a minute. I'm going to leave that with you and tidy it up for us.
Well, let's see. Why are we duped? Because we're not praying. Why are we duped? We don't live sacramental lives. You see, it has nothing to do with intelligence. There are plenty of very intelligent people who are duped. You see, we have to pray. I always say this, blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see the face of God. They shall see the face of God here. But in order to see and to hear, we have to purify ourselves and we have to pray and live sacramental lives. And then we won't be duped. But not enough of us are doing it. Out there, Catholics, if we start living sacramental lives, going to confession once a month, going to church once a week, receiving the Eucharist in the state of grace, and praying the rosary as Our Lady told us in Fatima, we'll see and we'll hear, and we won't be duped.
And you want to know what? And in not being duped, then we can overcome the enemy. Remember something out there at the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Make no mistake about it. Joe and I know full well that Christ has already won the victory. Okay. But we're still fighting for souls. All right. We still have God gave us a nation, the United States of America. We love our country and want to fight for our country. We need our country to get back on the right path and ban abortion and start respecting human life and start respecting the family. So we want to help our nation. We also want to save souls. We know Christ wins at the end, but we're still called upon to enter into this drama, this human drama, to pick up our sword, to pick up the rosary. As Padre Pio said, give me my weapon. He used to say when confronting the devil, go get me my weapon. We need to do these things, okay? And then let God take our game to the next level, okay? But there's our country's at stake, souls are at stake. And even though we know that Christ wins the victory at the end of the day, we still have our part to play. So let's do it. We do not have to let our nation go into the sewer. So we want to thank you all for joining us here. Remember, follow Joe and I on the Frontline TV on YouTube. We've passed 60,000 subscribers and we're looking for more. So we're growing there. The Frontline TV on YouTube. Forget about Facebook and all that. Just focus there. If you can take 5 seconds, like a video, subscribe, share. We got a lot of fun stuff up there. Veritas Catholic Network. Download the network's mobile app, and you can have access to all the station's content, including 35 to 40 interviews that Joe and I have done up to this point. And as always, we want to thank the King Dude out there for giving us a platform on the Crusade Channel. It is an honor to be here and to fight alongside good men and women down at the Crusade Channel, okay, who understand the enemy, who know how to fight this war, and are out there in the breach making it happen. So thank you all for listening to us on the Crusade Channel, your home for the Mike Church Show, Crusade Channel News, the Barrett Brief, and Kennedy Profession from sun up to sundown. The Crusade Channel is the last live radio station standing.